Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and this video is entitled Why No One Else Can Heal You, and Only You Can Do That. Uh, this topic is actually the one that I get the most pushback and resistance usually from people around. And I understand that because people often have these really hyper independent parts, or usually parentified child parts, who have been working so hard to not depend on anyone else and to do everything themselves. And so they feel like, what are you saying, that I have to keep doing all of this? And my answer is no, you don't. You can rest. But there is one inside of you that does not grow tired, who is love, who can offer unconditional love, who can travel back to times of trauma and effectively be with and heal parts of you that have been deeply wounded. That self inside of you has the capacity to do that. And while the self in other people does have some capacity to help you, it doesn't have the same capacity that yourself does. And so I want to explain why, because the last video I made, I sat down and was talking to my husband, Brian, about it. And he was sharing some thoughts, and I thought, oh, this is gold. This is a really beautiful way to understand why we are so highly equipped to help and heal our own parts, and others are highly equipped to help and heal their own parts. And he did this little thing like this. He was saying, okay, these are like two people, and here are their parts, right? Like this. And their parts are active here. And above each one, there's the self, right? So this is, say this is you, and here's all your parts. And you have this self who has this wider perspective and can hold all the parts in love. And it understands completely every experience that your parts have been through throughout your whole life. Even if it wasn't tainted by the traumas, it knows them. It has the capacity to fully understand every moment, every detail of your life, because it was there and it experienced that. No other person, no other person's self can do that. So your self is totally capable of doing that for you. And another person's self over here is fully capable of doing that for their parts. Their self was there in every moment of their trauma and attachment wounding and can fully get it, right? And so we were talking about how the self in each person is like this localized piece of the divine. So the self in me and the self in you is cut from the same cloth. It's the same essence, right? It's able to be calm and confident and connected and creative and compassionate and grounded and wise and have wide perspective and all of those wonderful qualities of self. It is love, capital L love in my experience. But the piece of it in each of us is localized in our bodies. So I remember hearing someone say this a while back, and I had religiously burdened parts that resisted it. But now my experience is that this is the truth, is that each person carries a piece of the divine in them. And the purpose of that, the benefit of that, is that the divine can have a localized experience of the world in our bodies, right? So I believe that when we die, our essence, our consciousness that's localized, the divinity within us, joins the collective divinity. It's like it joins the ocean of love and consciousness. But while it's in our bodies, it has a very specific experience. And what's the benefit of that? Because in these bodies, we do have suffering, we have limitations, right? To me, the difference is like if you were exploring a country, say you're exploring Australia, and you're in an airplane, and you basically fly over Australia, and you can see the whole landmass, and where it touches the water, and you can see some different terrain and different things. It would be the difference of that, exploring Australia via airplane, or being on the ground with your feet, with your five senses, hiking through the outback, hearing the birds, the bugs, the animals, feeling the air, feeling the earth on your feet, smelling things, tasting things, right? It's a totally different experience. And so that's why I love how Anita Morjani, who had near-death experience, came back and people asked her, what's the purpose of being human? And she said, it's to enjoy the world around you, to experience it fully through your five senses. So when she came back, what she wanted to do was to put her bare feet in the sand and watch the sunset as the waves came in on the ocean while eating an ice cream cone and feeling the breeze on her skin. That is what life is about. It's about experiencing things in our bodies through our senses, right? So let me come back to my point. So it's wonderful that we have this piece of the divine, or what some people would call the image of God, in each one of us. And that is the source of all of our healing. But another person's piece, a localized piece of the divine, can't possibly know all of our experiences. So it doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have the knowledge, and it also doesn't have access to us in the same way that our own piece of the divinity or self in us does. It can't be with us 24/7 like our own self can. So we each are the most highly equipped to care for the parts of ourselves. And this is when we do that, when we each are our own primary caregiver in that way, we can give from overflow to one another. We can fully enjoy being with one another. We can give each other pieces of information about each other. We can spend time together. We can just fully enjoy it. But we are not meant to be the primary caregiver for one another, because when our energy goes toward that, who's left to be there for our own parts, right? So I want to end by just saying I want to acknowledge that there are really helpful ways that another person can be there for us. There are different kinds of connection. For example, ourselves can connect, because ourselves are, like I said, cut from the same cloth. They're both a piece of the divine. When ourselves connect, there's a higher frequency intimacy connection that can happen. When our parts share and they see each other, we have empathy for one another, and that can feel really wonderful in connecting us with other people. Sometimes our parts will be suffering, and another person's self can offer compassion, and vice versa. So we can give and receive compassionate witness, empathetic attention, understanding, me too. Ourselves can connect on a very spiritual level. And there was one other thing. Oh, yes. I always say this in the group. There are two values to the group benefits. One is the compassionate witness and I'm not alone, feeling that we have. And the other is actually when another person's parts activate our own parts. It does not feel good, but that is also an opportunity for us to heal, because whenever our parts get activated, our piece of the divine, our self, can then go to them and love them and go back to maybe times they're stuck in and can heal them. So as we rub against other people's parts and we have part-to-part interactions, it can also be beneficial, even though it doesn't feel good. But the distinction I really want to make, though, is just that another person cannot heal us. They cannot control us. We cannot control another person. We cannot heal them. The best we can do is reflect back their self, point them toward their own self, see their innate goodness, their beauty, and reflect that back to them. But whether, we do work in our own system, we do work with a therapist or a coach or a peer, it's still always the self inside of you that is going to be the healing agent in your system. And this is actually really good, refreshing news. And it's not that you have to work really hard and nobody will ever be there for you, because actually, when you have two people in a relationship, you only ever have control over half the equation, over yourself. But eventually, as your parts begin having healthy relationship with yourself, a secure attachment that is kind and confident and tender and strong, they'll begin looking for that in other people as well. And so when two people who are both their primary caregivers come together, they're very safe. They can have deep intimacy. There can be a very different kind of relationship that's healing than maybe what we've experienced in the past with people who tend to be parts driven a lot of the time. So there can be very, very healthy relationship. And sometimes we meet people and we realize, if you look at my last video, that their parts are really acting out and we need to take ourselves away, that the only self-led decision that we have to be our own caregiver is to say, I understand why you're doing that. I know you have pain and trauma underneath and your protective parts are protecting you, but they are also harming me. And so I need to create distance and grieve that we can't have relationship right now. And that's a very self-led thing to do as well. So I hope this makes sense. If you do have questions or you still have parts that are protesting, that's okay. You're welcome to share their concerns in the comments below.